Part 3, we will continue with another Jehovah's Witness lawyer, Philip Brumley. He was interviewed in former governing body member Anthony Morris's part entitled, "What is the Best Education?" Anthony, please introduce us.
Speaking of lawyers, we have an interesting perspective from Brother Philip Brumley of the legal department. Let's go to our Patterson studio and listen to an interview of him conducted by Brother David Schaefer, a helper to the teaching committee.
And we're delighted to have with us Brother Philip Brumley, overseer of the legal department. He's been a full-time servant for the past 41 years, and for the last 28 years has been overseer of the legal department. Brother Brumley, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. I know you have a very busy schedule.
My pleasure.
How did it come about that you came to work in the legal department?
So I was working in the carpenter shop one day, and I got a telephone call from Brother Charles Steele. The governing body asked Brother Steele who could go through law school to become an attorney. The organization needed a few attorneys to help defend the rights of Jehovah's Witnesses. So Brother Steele asked me, or basically gave me the assignment. We want you to become a lawyer.
So the organization made a decision to send you through law school. What effect did that have on you?
Something happened that I was not prepared for. When a person goes to law school, the instructors, law professors, essentially tell the class, you're the hope of humanity. You happen to have been born in the best country in this planet, and you happen to be among the few in this country who have the circumstances to be able to attend law school. You are the future presidents, governors, senators, judges. But not only that, you're also the future social activists, the ones who are going to protect the disenfranchised, the poor, the one who needs their rights protected. If you do well, civilization will do well. If you do poorly, humanity may not survive. Now that may sound like a grandiose statement, but when you hear that repeated over a 4-year period, it can start creeping into your mind. When we obtain a legal victory or a development happens that's favorable to Jehovah's Witnesses, all thanks go to Jehovah, because in the years that I've been serving in the legal department, I can assure you that it is not because of the expertise of those of us who happen to have this privilege of service. Rather, it's because there's a spiritual motivation to our work, to where we work hard and then see what Jehovah wants to do with the matter. And time and again, David, we've seen Jehovah's hand in our work. And when something favorable happens, rather than in any way thinking, well, that was because I did such a good job, the genuine reality of it is that Jehovah did a good job.
So when things go miserably, does that mean Jehovah did a poor job too? In the following case, the plaintiffs sued, asserting claims of negligence and punitive damages against defendants WTPA and WTNY. It stemmed from allegations that members of a local Jehovah's Witness congregation sexually abused them when they were children. What happened throughout the course of this case? Let's read directly from the plaintiff's reply, brief in support of their motion for sanctions.
From this case's inception, Watchtower and Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, WTPA, and its lawyers were uniquely in possession of the facts and knowledge establishing that it should be subject to personal jurisdiction in Montana. Rather than honestly acknowledging those facts, WTPA had its in-house counsel put forth a false and intentionally misleading version of WTPA's role in the Jehovah's Witness organization, with the hope that the court would rely on it to dismiss plaintiffs' cases. WTPA then objected to and obstructed plaintiffs' discovery that would ultimately expose that false narrative. Only when confronted with Rule 11 penalties did WTPA agree to withdraw its frivolous motion. The result was 17 months of wasted litigation. Plaintiffs submit that this is sanctionable conduct, and the court has the authority to sanction attorneys Brumley and Taylor. Questions unanswered by WTPA's response. WTPA filed a 20-page response brief, offering no explanation to the most fundamental questions. Why did Brumley tell the court that WTPA did not establish or disseminate policy or procedure to congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses in Montana when WTPA's books did exactly that? Why did Brumley and WTPA provide the court an intentionally misleading version of WTPA's activities, while simultaneously attempting to prevent the plaintiffs from discovering the truth? Why didn't WTPA withdraw its motion in August of 2021 before forcing plaintiffs to spend hundreds of more hours marshalling and briefing the extensive evidence obtained in discovery? And why did WTPA file a frivolous motion without a good faith factual basis in the first place? WTPA offers no answers for these crucial questions. Brumley's false statements. WTPA's response fails to address Brumley's false representations to the court. For instance, Brumley's assertion that WTPA did not establish or disseminate policy or procedure to congregations in Montana is demonstrably false. The evidence shows that WTPA did establish and disseminate policies and procedures in Montana. Brumley's assertion that WTPA did not author, print, publish, hard copies of manuals containing WTPA's policies and procedures is demonstrably false. The evidence shows that WTPA did author, print, and publish manuals containing WTPA's policies and procedures. Brumley's assertion that WTPA had no contact with congregations in Montana is demonstrably false. The evidence shows that WTPA's circuit overseers did have contact with congregations in Montana. Plaintiffs are not mischaracterizing Brumley. They are citing to WTPA's own documents to show that representations in its affidavits are not true. Brumley's intentionally misleading statements. A lie of omission is still a lie. Mr. Brumley is a lawyer, and he should understand the implications of submitting misleading half-truths to a court with the hope that they will be relied upon to dismiss his opponent's case. WTPA argues that Brumley's statements about WTPA holding copyrights and conducting humanitarian aid are technically true because WTPA does hold copyrights and provide humanitarian aid. WTPA's technically true argument avoids the point. Brumley's affidavit was intentionally crafted to convince the court of something that was never true, i.e., convince the court that WTPA's role in the Jehovah's Witness Church was of such small importance and limited scope that it would be improper to subject it to jurisdiction in Montana. If Brumley was not trying to trick the court with misleading half-truths, his affidavit would have acknowledged, inter alia, WTPA was the corporate agency directing the administrative and religious work of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide. All of the other Jehovah's Witness corporations look to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania as the mother organization that supervises the printing and publication of all the literature that has proved so beneficial to Jehovah's Witnesses in their study of the Bible and in their proclamation of the good news of God's kingdom. Brumley's lies of omission and attempt to deceive were part of a sustained effort to interfere with the pursuit of truth in this case.
In a 15-page ruling, the court found Brumley's conduct sanctionable and ordered the plaintiffs to submit a financial affidavit. They did, detailing total costs of $190,723, but because the defendants previously submitted payment of $22,631 as a result of a WTPA's motion, the amount claimed by plaintiffs came to $168,091. Ouch. How many ice creams will poor Sophia have to forgo to pay for just the lawyer sanctions of this particular case? Why would an organization that claims it abhors child abuse go to such lengths to cover it up? I have links in the description to official sources for these court documents because we wouldn't want the organization claiming enemies of God produce falsified copies to disrupt their unity.
Now, first of all, there is Satan. He was able to destroy the unity that existed between humans and Jehovah. And he still does not want us to succeed personally or as a group. Since his frontal attacks have not been successful, he tries it from within by employing all kinds of cunning. For example, decades ago, the state secret police in one country launched heavy attacks on different responsible brothers. By means of fake letters, these brothers were accused of being drunkards, adulterers, and traitors. In another country, the secret police produced falsified copies of the Watchtower by twisting the content so as to serve Satan's purpose. Satan will continue to employ similar tactics in the future in an effort to destroy our precious unity. And today, he even has modern technology at his disposal.
And with something called deep fake technology, dishonest people can even do things like swap the faces and voices in a video to create a completely fake report.
In 2018, General Counsel Philip Brumley was a keynote speaker at a program in Jamestown, New York, where he spoke about Jehovah's Witnesses and human rights.
So this is sobering. You wake up thinking that fundamental freedoms exist and always will. But this is happening to the largest religious minority in Russia as we speak. So when we get back to that point, Jehovah's Witnesses, canaries in the coal mine of human rights. If the global community does not stand up for Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia, what will happen to the rights of others in Russia? The rights of Jehovah's Witnesses are undermined in Russia. What about the rights of others?
Do Jehovah's Witnesses really care about human rights in Russia, or only about their own religious freedom? Let's see what governing body member Kenneth Cook has to say.
The world under Satan's control is also ruining all flesh. How so? Along with false religion, human society in general is gradually corrupting everything that Jehovah has set in place for mankind. We see it in their incessant nationalistic wars. We see it in their racial hatred and divisiveness. We see it in their promoting of abortion. We see it in their so-called gay marriage. We see it in the gender blurring that the world is promoting. You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say. You can be whatever you feel like or choose to be. Really? If that is how the Creator feels about the switching of clothing, how much more detestable he must view the world's attempts to blur the lines of gender with false labeling. Recently, the World Health Organization adjusted its view of gender. It now states that, quote, there are many genders existing on a spectrum from male to female. It added that gender identity exists on a continuum and that sex is not limited to male or female. Again, really? Talk about an attempt to tear apart what Jehovah has made. So then even government agencies on a global scale are getting involved, and they are critical of anyone who does not adopt their warped view. And going back to marriage, Jehovah instituted the arrangement to be a permanent bond between a man and a woman. He made them male and female, and the two will be one flesh. Jehovah's purpose for humans is clear, but Satan's world now says that marriage can be between two men or two women. Again, really? We can be certain that promoting this corrupt view is part of Satan's attempt to ruin mankind, to make them so abhorrent to Jehovah that he would abandon humans and his purpose for mankind in the earth. But that will never happen. God's purpose for mankind and their home will be fulfilled. Just like the disgusting names of the false gods that humans have given to the literal planets, the false labeling of humankind and the immorality will not continue. For his own namesake and for those who love him, Jehovah will bring to ruin those ruining the earth.
This talk by a governing body member on the heels of Brumley's talk on human rights is ironic, considering that Jehovah's Witnesses appear to share similar views on LGBTQ as the Russian government. Jehovah's Witnesses wish to portray a benevolent attitude to the world about human rights, while at the same time condemning and mocking those in the LGBT community. If their own religious liberties weren't restricted, I think that Jehovah's Witnesses would be privately applauding the Russian government's stance. Up next is another Jehovah's Witness spokesman interviewed on the news.
40 miles northwest of a bustling New York City, you'll find a 45-acre complex sitting on a tranquil lake here in Warwick, New York.
So our primary purpose is not to convert but it's to give people an opportunity to see what the Bible has to say.
Back in 1953, the Jehovah's Witnesses came before the Supreme Court of Canada. Mr. H.C. Covington, a minister of the religious organization known as Jehovah's Witnesses and vice president of the legal governing body of that organization, in describing the nature of the religious belief of Jehovah's Witnesses and of their activities, he said in part, Jehovah's Witnesses are an unincorporated body of missionary evangelists, their primary purpose being to preach the gospel of God's kingdom throughout the whole world. So the primary purpose stated was to preach the gospel, but doesn't that include making disciples? And doesn't making disciples mean converting them? But the exact phrasing the spokesman used was, our primary purpose is not to convert, and technically that's true. But of course, conversion is an important part of the evangelizing work. The 1971 yearbook writes, these dedicated, baptized people must now be evangelizers, which meant they would try to convert others to Christianity. The book, Qualified to be Ministers, states, by the spiritual activity of Jehovah's Witnesses, those in spiritual need are comforted and converted, and are themselves eventually qualified to be ministers to comfort and convert still other spiritually hungry ones. It's important to parse the exact phrasing Jehovah's Witnesses use. Just because something is not their primary work does not mean they do not do it. They shy away from saying convert these days, but they use other loaded words and phrases such as finding honest-hearted ones, which means the same thing.
So too today, we have many like Paul and Barnabas, who are actively working to find honest-hearted ones.
That makes me think of the comments of a well-adjusted teenage brother whom we served while in the circuit work many years ago. This young brother went straight into the regular pioneer work out of high school, and I asked him why he did so. He explained that he knew he could have gotten a full-time secular job and bought a new car for himself. But he reasoned that in a few years, that car would rust out and break down, and he would have nothing. But he knew that he could go into the pioneer work and build a close relationship with Jehovah, and perhaps even find an honest-hearted person and be able to teach that one the truth. And he knew that would last forever.
Their primary purpose may not be to convert, but it is an integral part of their evangelizing activity. In the next part, we will look at a couple more examples, including a Jehovah's Witness assigned to the oversight group of the service department in Bethel, making excuses as to why the organization couldn't hand over all the documents containing child sex abuse cases.
Honestly, Mr. Zalkin, the efforts that we've made up to this point is just trying to figure out how on earth we could ever do that in our filing system. It would take years to do that.
We'll also see how long an expert witness brought in said it would actually take. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Special thanks to Twitter user @JWGoverningBody, Jexit2020, and DPerez578 for buying me coffee. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.